Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. And I'm going to start with sharing the deck that we wanted to present today.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I was just getting off another call. Um, let's see. I guess that you're driving now, VJ?
Yes, so I've
Oh, okay.
got the deck and I think we are ready to start. We have several familiar names who joined us, and yeah, I think we're set to go.
Is Nikki on? Hi, Nikki. I can't see you.
Yes,
Oh,
we have
she's
this
on. Okay. Just so you know, I can only see DeBanco, Ken, and you, which is strange, but okay. Well, hello, everyone. Um, Thank you for the time you're giving us today. I'm going to ask a question. What if you could take a few small steps and see significant positive impact in your document remediation efforts? I'm hoping everybody's like, wow, you'd make my day. That would be great. This session will dive into actionable strategies, dive into trends and challenges around making documents accessible with WCAG and PDF UA regulations. Of course, housekeeping. We would love for this to be collaborative. So feel free to ask your questions in the chat. I will also be taking a few breaks throughout the conversation to engage with some of the questions that you've had, so you don't have to wait in angst for us to answer your question. So, BJ, may I ask you to go to the next slide? Just a quick little introduction to one more, please. It's me, Kristin Yokota. I'm proud to say that I've been helping organizations, big and small, achieve their accessibility goals, regardless of where they are in their accessibility journey over the last decade. So let me get into our guests today. The next slide, please, VJ. Ken Nakata. Some of you may be familiar with Ken Nakata. He has over 30 years of experience in accessibility. He is a former senior trial attorney for disability rights and knower of all things accessibility related. He's also the principal of Converge Accessibility, an invaluable resource to anyone that's on this call. So feel free to take down his contact information. And then lastly, we have Nikki. Oh, can we go to the next slide, please? Yes, Nikki, I'm so grateful you're here. She's with Arapahoe County. She is the manager of information security and compliance. She also was a key stakeholder with her county uh, in relation to their accessibility efforts. She is here to share real world experiences and answer any of the questions that you may have as a municipality peer. So, Nikki, welcome to the party. All right. Next slide, please. What we're going to do is just briefly touch on the accessibility landscape. Many municipalities may be struggling to comply with the accessibility guidelines for document accessibility. Depending on which state you represent, there are certain calls to actions and timelines that are coming very quickly, and for others, May for Title II, May of 2026. But today we're going to break down top 5 things that you can do today to tackle the task at hand. We'll also discuss the importance of document compliance, address key challenges you may be facing, how process and tooling can facilitate your organization or municipality to create more accessible content for your community users. So if I may, go to the next slide. I believe it's around the importance of document compliance. I'm sure we're very familiar. There's really 7 key areas. There's a legal obligation, inclusivity and accessibility obviously is part of that, ensuring that your community members have improved user experience. Um, And in relation to document compliance, I think operational efficiency is very top of mind. It's a key element to success. Document compliance can have a direct impact on your reputation. Um, I think it's important to note that scalability is something that should be top of mind for some of you. Some of you may be smaller than others, but the ability to engage with technology or service providers that can manage your call to action at scale, I think is important to note. Um, Obviously, risk mitigation is always top of mind. It also provides a competitive edge or for you to be considered a thought leader in your community. I know the state of Colorado, that's why I invited Nikki. Her municipality really got a head start and they built in some really best in class processes with the help of Ken Nakata. And a lot of her peers have reached out to her to ask her, what did you do? Can I mirror some of the things that you've learned? So I think it's important to communicate with your peers during this time. If I may ask to go to the next slide, and this is around addressing key challenges. Um, Ken, may I ask you to maybe share your thoughts on what you've been hearing from municipality peers when it relates to addressing key challenges. We know they're basic ones. There aren't a lot of people. They're short on budget. They don't have a lot of time. What else are you hearing?
Well, pretty much that. And the fact that it's all coming up on them very quickly and they don't really have any idea about what to do. The accessibility is really a new issue for digital accessibility in state and local governments, even though it's been out there with the DOJ for 20 years. It's just that now, all of a sudden, people are treating it as if it's a completely new requirement.
Understood. And Nikki, can I ask you? I know you're on mute. So, what were some of the challenges that Arapahoe faced just when the conversation came up? Can you maybe share some of the internal challenges or observations you made with your municipality?
Yes, can you hear me okay, Kristin?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So Arapahoe County, we had not started down our mission of making our digital assets, information communication technology accessible. So something that we found challenging was just trying to wrap our heads around how are we going to identify all of the SaaS applications that currently exist within the county, and then how were we going to convey the message to all of our departments and divisions on the need to identify which applications existed. Again, we're talking about those web applications, and then what information was being put into these applications, and then also was that application externally facing or internally facing. So something that we did, which I guess we can talk a little bit later, Kristin. Your question was specifically around the challenges. And then not only that, but we are a large size county or a mid-sized county, I would say. And so we have a lot of documents, external documents that are, probably have never been made accessible. So that was another challenge that Ken and his team really helped us to streamline and find a very good solution that would not only work for Arapahoe County, meaning that it wasn't only feasible, but it also was going to produce the best content for our constituents.
Thank you so much for sharing. VJ, may I ask you to move to the next slide? And what we're going to talk about is some of the regulations that may be top of mind. I've called out a few states. So Ken, if I could ask you maybe to talk about just refreshing everybody on this call about Title II, what that means, some of the requirements about the community size. I know for Title II, I think it's communities with over 50,000 members, community members, as well as for folks on the call that are from Colorado. Do you think, and anything else that comes to mind?
Sure. So, Colorado has a slightly different requirements than under ADA, under Title II of the ADA. The Justice Department recently amended their Title II regulations to include web accessibility back in April of 2024. The And so April 24th of 2026 will be the 2-year anniversary of that. And that's when larger governments, state and local governments, and public entities that have 50,000 or more residents will have to comply with WCAG 2.1 A and AA. And for smaller governments or for special district governments, they get until April 24th, 2027 to comply. Colorado's on an accelerated schedule because Colorado has HB 21-1110, which is a state law, and that required originally that all public entities within Colorado had to meet WCAG 2.1 by July 1st of 2024. That was subsequently extended to 2025 this year. This year,
Yes.
provided that they make regularly progress reports demonstrating that they are making good faith efforts towards compliance.
Okay, thank you. I think that's helpful just for some of us, depending on where you are, some of the deadlines. I can say that this is definitely resonating with state and local governments. We're seeing a lot of traction. It's funny how these things can, like you said, it's been out for years, but now everybody's panicking, right? It's always at the last hour people take action, but we're here to help. So please feel free to I think I'll pause here right now and see if anybody has any questions for Nikki or Ken based on Nikki sharing some of the challenges she's faced. Maybe ask her some questions about how her and her organization went about resolving them, or maybe ask Ken or myself questions. So I'll pause and see if anybody has anything they'd like to ask. Okay.
And
I guess,
Kristin, can I say something just for our
Of course.
local governments that are out there? So those
yes.
the two challenges that I brought up, that was just a couple of challenges, right, for Arapahoe County. I think something, and maybe we'll get into this a little bit later, but something that I would like to share with our government partners is this isn't something to fear. It's not something to be afraid of. Like you said, that this has been around for quite a while, but Colorado really kind of put the fire under state agencies and then local governments and municipalities around to get the ball moving for a good reason, right? We want to be inclusive to everybody. So I think taking a breath and partnering with your government municipalities is key, because if we didn't have the answer, we were fortunate enough to partner with Ken, Nakata, and Converge, but we're also fortunate enough to partner with the city of Centennial, reach out for resources, reach out for, hey, what are you doing here? What are you doing for this? And then you really have to take everything into account, not only with, the consultants that we worked with, Ken Nakata and his team, what is going to work best for your organization while producing the outcome that is required, not only under House Bill 21-110, but also Section 508.
Well said, Nikki. So let me just echo some of the key points that Nikki made. Number one, take a breath. Okay, no one's going to die. And I've seen a lot of panic out there, and we don't want that to be the case. Number two, reach out to your peers, whatever state you live in, reach out to a municipality that's doing well, or you've heard, has taken action or making headway. Don't reach out. People want to share information. People love to help others. So I think what Nikki says, communicate, reach out. I think that is something that we have to say more often than not. And lastly, remember, accessibility, it's a journey. It's not a destination. The most important thing, like I said at the beginning of the calls, if you can walk away and take one small step today, it will drive progress over time. So well said, Nikki. BJ, may we go to the next slide? So obviously, there are some things that we can share with you in regards to a best-in-class approach, with some of you just starting out and trying to lay down the foundation of what does our plan look like. And to Nikki's point, remember, one size does not fit all. So one of the things that we wanted to share collectively with you are a few things to take into consideration. So you don't have to necessarily pivot halfway through and think to yourself, oh, that didn't work. One of the most important parts is to get senior leadership sign off. Having it come from senior leadership, it just helps you gain adoption and gain the resources and the workflows and the policy adoption so much faster. That's the best case scenario, but I would definitely champion for that. It also goes without saying that a well-defined process that is repeatable, measurable, in a framework that allows you to manage that over time and make course corrections as you go, or when you see regressions to pivot. So I think that is important to note. By aligning processes and technology together, it eliminates redundancies and efforts. It also provides a holistic framework for long-term success. Talking about this is a journey, it's not a destination. So we encourage you to reflect on your current accessibility strategies and explore some of the best practices we've shared, or to reach out to your peers and ask them what has worked for them, so you don't necessarily have to recreate the wheel. The great thing about policies and processes is that they're repeatable, right? And you can just make small edits to what will work for your particular municipality. May I ask to go to the next slide? Okay, this is talking about some of the 5 steps that you can take today to help tackle the task at hand. I think one of the first things that you should do, and Ken and Nikki, I'm going to rely on you to back me up or to argue against this, is to identify and prioritize non-compliant documents. Meaning identify those that are public facing or internally facing, and when doing so, focus on the frequency those documents are engaged with. You can do that through your webmaster. You can, if let's say you outsource your website to a third party, if you manage your website internally, you can ask your IT person who manages the web statistics to get you that information. I think that could be a very impactful starting point. Nikki, Ken, would you agree?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, the thing I would add, probably as a step even before that, is try to figure out which one of your documents are actually actively being used. Because if it so many public entities have websites that are just cluttered with inactive documents. So first figure that out, and then also figure out what you just said, Kristin, which is, their degree of public exposure.
And Tammy, you have a question, I think.
Yeah, we have 2 questions from
Yes.
Carrie as well as
Okay.
from Tammy. And
Please ask.
the first question from Carrie is, I'd love to hear how you're approaching internal digital technology. How are you prioritizing it, etc.? Thank you.
So I think that question is for me, correct, Ken?
I think so.
Okay, yes. So Converge, we worked with Converge and then our legal department to create a survey that would ask all of our departments and our divisions, what technology do you use to provide a service? Either you're talking about internal, so to provide a service to our employees. So for instance, SAP is a very large application that we use internally, and that is used to track employees' time, benefits, time off, sick time, etc. So with that in mind, we created a risk matrix for assessing and prioritizing which applications we would identify and remediate first, or I should say identify, assess, and then remediate based on the criticality level. So if it had, if it provides a service to more than, correct me if I'm wrong, but more than 50 employees, then we would identify that as a high-risk application. And that survey we gave all of our departments until the end of Q1 of this year to identify those existing applications. We've received all of our surveys back to date. So we will start now working on prioritizing those applications. When I say we, Ken, myself, and then our legal team will start to work to assess each application based on criticality level. And then there was another question about how did we get senior management to buy into having a program? This took some time. Luckily, we really do have a very supportive board of county commissioners. We also have a very supportive executive team. However, there was a lot of ambiguity around it, right? This again is not new, but it was new. And so when we were coming to the county, it seemed very big, right? This was going to be a huge effort. But as Kristin had mentioned, Ken had reassured us that this is a journey. It's not something that it's not a something that is going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen within 3 months because there's so much to House Bill 2110 and then Section 508. And so what we did was we started to communicate, right? Communicate. You have to be a good storyteller for your Board of County Commissions. You want to tell them the who, the what, the when, and the why, where and the why. And then after that, I would say it was a, Ken, how many times did we go to the executive team? I would say
Oh
at least
gosh, half a
a
dozen.
handful, right?
Yeah.
Half a dozen times. And each time we would approach our executive team, we would have an additional roadmap ahead of us, an additional plan. So we would have something tangible that we could present to them, and then also give them dates on when we were going to roll out what to the county. Like, for instance, starting with our CMS, right? That was the first one. We had Ken and his team assess our CMS site for accessibility, and then we had our CMS vendor remediate those barriers that were found, starting with the blocked barriers, the most critical. And then we moved into our applications, telling our executive team that we want all of our applications identified by the end of quarter one of 2025. Then we have a plan that all of our documents are going to be made accessible by July 2025. So Ken and his team and myself and legal created training. Not only did they create a virtual training for us, but we have now an in-person training on how to create accessible documents. And then later down the road, in quarter four of 2025, we have a plan for all of our divisions and departments to list every PDF document that exists within their website and then prioritize that, what Kristin said, based on risk. How many people view that PDF, and does that per times a day or week, and then does that PDF provide a service? And then we will then remediate those documents through a third-party source like Kristin.
Thank you for those questions, Nikki. Ken, great guidance with your responses. So we'll go back. I'm going to go back to some of the best practices. Nikki kind of touched on this, and so is Ken. Established a document accessibility policy. When I say that, and Ken probably could go for hours around this, but as Nikki said, communication, set clear guidelines for document creation and maintenance. This might be a farther part of your policy and process when it relates to document creation, but I think it's fair to say that having a policy around document creation and maintenance is helpful to have. Another consideration is to invest in technology. There's so much technology out there that can be your friend. Embrace your options. Explore technologies that can take a lot of the manual effort of the task at hand when it relates to documentation. Explore remediation partners. So if you don't have the skill sets or the time internally to take this on right now, there's still other options for you. You can outsource your document remediation to vendors to help you meet some of your internal goals. In the meantime, while you're working on your internal creation processes, as Nikki said, and Ken is a huge advocate of this, training and awareness. Training and awareness is key. Educate staff on accessibility standards, help them create more accessible content by providing them with a framework, right? Build some guidelines into how your municipality wants to create documentation internally. Stick to those guidelines, share that information so everyone is on the same page. And I've already spoken about partnering. Definitely explore partners out there. There are many of us who are here to support the task at hand. If are there any questions to follow up based on what we were sharing?
It looks like Tammy has her hand raised, Kristin.
Okay. And I don't see the question. I don't know, VJ
There is
or Tammy, do you?
but I just gave Tammy permission to speak.
I think you went through it. My question was, how do you get senior management buy-in on this? Because, you know, we're just developing our program and you know, just because they're supposed to do it and there's a law to do it, that I'm not sure that's going to be enough. So that was my question.
Storytelling, Tammy. 100% communications is key. Being able to not only share, because you're exactly right? This is a law, this is a regulation, but being able to tell them the why behind it. So when you are more inclusive to everybody, that means that you are going to potentially reach a farther, larger audience than just your community at hand.
Yeah, I'd add to that also. It helps to have a good communications plan. And one of the members of our team, Laura Ruby, who used to be, what is her title? Used to be the former director of accessibility policy and standards at Microsoft. In Redmond. She is a master at that. And so it's about creating, you know, what the communication plan is going to look like, and then thinking about all the little hiccups that come along the way. I also noticed that in working with different counties and municipalities, that sometimes it's, you know, you have to go in overly prepared. I'd say start with the attorneys. That's my number one recommendation. If your attorneys aren't on board, your organization is not on board. And the attorneys are the ones who recognize risk. They're the ones that your city council, for instance, or county commissioners, they're the ones that your legal counsel are the people that they're ultimately going to turn to figure out where they're going to place their priorities. So develop that good legal case. And have a great communications plan. And sometimes, you know, I hate to say it, but sometimes it's not necessarily the message. Sometimes it's the messenger. And so we found that with certain organizations, you know, some organizations only listen to people on the inside because they're the only ones who understand the organization. Some organizations only listen to people on the outside, you know, that are the specialists in a particular subject matter. So it all depends. And so you have to figure out like what your culture is really like too.
Great advice, great insight, Ken. And thank you, Nikki. We hope that was useful information. So the next slide, we were going to share some tips because we all need a little bit of help. So I identified top 10 precursors to document structure that I hope would resonate, that don't seem too complex. So the first one I'm going to start with is use structured headings, lists, and semantic formality. So what that means in layman's terms is properly tag headings, paragraphs, and tables in the original file. Number two, apply hierarchy with headings to organize content. So when you think about the logical reading order of a document, it goes heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, etc. So this is something basic that you can adopt internally, and you can think about it logically. Number 3, describe images, charts, and graphs concisely for screen readers. So you might be tasked with a budget graph or a geographical map. Try to think of the screen reader and how they would be interpreting that information. Another thing when it relates to images, decorative images should be marked as artifact. So they're ignored by a screen reader. That might be a municipality logo. It might be an image that holds a page number. Those things don't need to be conveyed to a screen reader. It just adds noise to them. So I figured I would share that as well as a best practice and pretty easy to follow. For scan documents, use OCR technology and then verify that the text can be highlighted and copied. Avoid check here. This is a fun one for 5, or use raw URLs for hyperlinks. I think for obvious reasons. Moving down the line, define header rows and data cells for screen readers. And I think a lot of you will appreciate this. Avoid nested lists whenever possible, because they're very challenging to make accessible. Ensure content flows naturally, such as headings, which we discussed, they come first, then paragraphs, then lists, etc. For text and background, it should meet WCAG 2.0 contrast ratios. I know color context can be a bear for all of us. Avoid conveying information with color only. I think that's a good takeaway as well today. For the last 2, set a descriptive title in a PDF property, not just the file name. If that makes sense, I'll repeat it again. Set a descriptive title in the PDF properties, not just the file name. And lastly, use technology. Use some type of remediation software. Obviously, that can be a breadth of things. Adobe, JAWS, NVDA, or PrEP. And I'll pause there. Any questions there? Or we have a few more slides.
Kristin, I'd make one other comment with regard to that, which is
Sure.
if you're authoring in a Microsoft Office environment, use the accessibility wizard when you're exporting your document to PDF.
Good one. Glad you mentioned that. You want to repeat it again?
Yeah, make sure to use the accessibility wizard in Microsoft Office products. So,
Thank
like
you.
Word, for instance, has a accessibility wizard, and it'll step through a lot of the things that you may have missed in the document. And I always use it whenever I'm exporting because I always forget something.
Great point. Great point, Ken. Thank you. Okay. VJ, if it's not a bother, I think the next slide talks about best practices. So obviously we want to share what we are hearing out there. One of the best practices that we are seeing adopted time and time again, when possible, is to create templates for your documents. Templates come in 2 versions. One would be considered simple and another would be considered complex. So a templated simple document might be a pre-employment form, right? Or it could be registering your dog for a dog license or applying for a passport. Those are documents that are repeatable, meaning the data within the template it's highly text heavy. It's going to predominantly stay the same, but by templatizing it, it makes it a lot easier because going back to policy process, you're starting with a solid foundation of that document and then it's repeatable. So the same structure might apply for the dog license or to register for the beach pass for the summer. Just giving examples. And a dynamic use case might be a budget book. I know a lot of you, Centennial, has a budget book. Those are produced either monthly, quarterly. The structure of the document, if you can do it, and again, it's around standardizing, formatting the document. The only thing that's going to change or become dynamic in nature will be the data inside of it, meaning maybe the budget a graph, something like that. But a lot of the heavy lifting has already taken place. Another thing to consider is creating a repository for your images that you repeatedly are using. That could be a logo, it could be territory maps. But think for your municipality, what is repetitive? And if you can, create a repository for alt text that everybody can refer to. Reach out, like we said, communication is key. Engage with software that can make your life a little bit easier. Always engage with human intervention as a last check. Obviously, you always want to be accommodating for screen reader users. You can use TalkBack and VDA, or rely on software that's available out there through a technology vendor, to make sure that you're incorporating screen reader users. And we can move on to the next page. I think we talked a lot already about, the benefits of proactive compliance. I know many of you are in a more reactive stage, but any step that you can take internally to move the process forward and to create a roadmap, regardless of how big or small that step might be, that is creating a more proactive approach moving forward. And Ken, can I ask you to maybe talk about some of the smaller proactive steps that municipalities can take internally to avoid some of the things that, the 3 points that are on the screen right now: avoiding litigation, fostering an inclusive community, and, creating better content and workflows internally. But what would you say could be some proactive small steps that our audience can take today that are reasonable and easily adopted?
Well, I mentioned before that, just making sure that if you're going to send out a Microsoft Office document, make sure to run it through the accessibility wizard. That's the simplest thing that anybody can do. Also, just trying to be cognizant of, of decent document structure, I think is also really important. The goal at the end of all of this, in terms of creating in terms of being proactive, is creating that plan, like you mentioned, and making sure that everybody knows their place in it, and trying to create processes that pretty much run themselves. If you have a step-by-step process for, oh, I have a high-risk application that I'm going to buy, for instance, or I have a high-risk document that I'm going to be creating, the more that you can create using the tools that are available and the consultants that you have, or the tech or the skill set that you have internally, trying to just create a standardized process so that when people move off to a different job, that they can fill in really easily, and they'll have a very step-by-step approach that they can just pick up and run with. That, I think, is ultimately what creates a culture of accessibility and just makes it easy.
Well said. I see Nikki nodding her head. Um, are there any questions? We've shared what we wanted to this afternoon, but we'd love to open the floor to any questions that our attendees might have, how we can help you
There's one
answer
question
any questions.
from an anonymous attendee. In Word, is the accessibility wizard the same as the accessibility?
Well, let's see. I can pull open my copy of Word right now. And if I am,
It says accessibility checker, I think is what it is called, if that's what you're asking, the terminology.
yeah, on a Mac, it says it's under Tools and then Check Accessibility. I don't know. On Windows, it may be called something else, but yeah.
And I think on Windows it was accessibility checker, right, Nikki?
I believe so, and I have one
Yeah.
up right now. Let's see here. It is under review, and then it's oh no, I'm sorry, Ken, you are right. It's check accessibility, and then you would have options, and you can check accessibility. That'll run through your entire document, and it'll navigate you to where you are missing an alt text, maybe a title like Kristin had mentioned. Make sure that you have the proper heading structure, lists, and so forth.
Just a quick tip. I can never remember where what the menu structure is in Word or any other Office product. So whenever I'm like stymied and trying to figure out where it is, I just go up to the help menu and there's a search bar there and just start typing access, and before you even finish typing accessibility, it'll give you a list of the different options that come up with that, and one of them will definitely be your accessibility checker.
Great tip, Ken. Great tip. Any other questions? Okay, well, I want to give a big thank you to Nikki and to Ken today. They were invaluable resources. Thank you so much for all of that you shared with the attendees today. Thank you to everybody who's on this call. I know we're all passionate about it. It's one step at a time. And we are grateful for your commitment and effort, and have a great rest of your day. These are some contacts.
Last
So
question
if you ever need any help, feel free to reach out. And
come up, Kristin, for Nikki, which says, have you encountered any documents that are very complex or present challenges when remediating? For example, documents with underlined text or strike through text?
So we have not come across those documents yet. That does not mean that they don't exist. We just haven't gotten to that portion of our plan. But when we do get to that plan, we are going to outsource all of those complex documents and complex and high risk documents to a third party for remediation. And Kristin does that very well.
thank you. BJ, any other questions? Sorry, I didn't know there was one and I was wrapping up.
Looks like there's one more.
Can we cover a bit more on PDF UA versus WCAG standards?
Ken.
Oh boy. Yeah, I don't know PDF UA terribly well. It's based roughly on WCAG. But there's a reason why we have PDF experts like Continual Engine in the world, to make up for where uh, people like me who are really more of the web world fall down. So um,
And that's really the difference. WCAG is more web-based, where PDF UA standards are specifically addressing the accessibility of PDF documents. So for the question, that's really the core differences. WCAG was developed or created to give web accessibility guidelines, and PDF UA was to give specific guidelines around PDF document accessibility, if that makes sense.
thanks.
No
Good to know.
problem.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I don't see any others on the screen. I think that's everything
Okay.
now. And if there are more
Well, thank you.
please reach out to us on contact@continualengine.com. We also will be sending a copy of the deck to all those who attended, as well as those who registered, actually. So some who have not attended will also get a copy of the recording. So yeah, and if there are questions following that, you know where to find us.
Well, thank you. Bye, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Bye, Ken. Bye,
Thank
Nikki.
you.
See ya.